And I think we are live. Welcome to St. Anne's live stream college Q&A. Yeah, please do submit your questions, and for like the next hour or so, we're gonna answer any questions you have, as well as give our experiences based on our time at university so far. So we're gonna begin by introducing ourselves. So, Issa, would you like to begin and introduce yourself, your college stats?
Sure. So I'm Isa. I'm a third year geographer. I'm currently in Oxford, but I'm originally from the Netherlands. And I also am a member of the College Boat Club, so I do rowing if anyone is interested in that.
Amelia, yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Amelia. I'm a third year studying material science, and I'm originally Portuguese, but I live in Geneva right now. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm David. I'm going into my third year studying maths and computer science. I'm from Southeast London, I was born in East London. I live in Southeast, and yeah, that's all my stats for now. So yeah, please do send your questions in, and we'll try our best to answer as many of them as possible. But in the meantime, we'll begin by answering the question, why did you apply to St. Anne's and why? Amina, would you like to begin?
Yeah, so I didn't actually apply to St. Anne's just because I didn't know what college to apply for at all. But I'm really glad I ended up at St. Anne's. It's really welcoming, and I had one of my 2 interviews at St. Anne's. And the vibe was just really nice in the JCR. Everyone was super friendly, and the tutors are really kind as well. And so I think that's really good. Also, if you study a science like me, then St. Anne's is really close to most science departments, so that's a definite bonus.
Anissa?
Yeah, I think maybe we're not the best group to ask because I actually also did not apply to St. Anne's. But I do think that shows sort of how much it doesn't matter what college you apply to, because in the end you can still end up anywhere. And if they think you'd be a better fit at a different college, or maybe one college is super oversubscribed, you will just be pulled to a different college. So I got pulled to St. Anne's before interviews, which meant that I did all my interviews at St. Anne's, which I think was really nice because actually, you get to see the college, you get to meet the people who will be your tutors if you get in. And I am really, like Amelia, I'm really happy I ended up at St. Anne's because I think it's such it's a super nice college, and also, for example, I find it very important to have good kitchen access. So the fact that St. Anne's offers 3-year accommodation, and also every accommodation has access to quite a good kitchen, I'm really happy that that was part of it.
Yeah, so I guess I'm the odd one out of the bunch. I did apply to St. Anne's, and fortunately I got my offer as well at St. Anne's. But yeah, one of the reasons why I decided to apply to St. Anne's, one was because of its location relative to the Maths Institute. St. Anne's is like a couple minutes walk from the Maths Institute, and when you have 9 to 11 lectures in the morning, Monday to Friday throughout first year, being 2 minutes from the department is really a blessing than the 30-minute walk some of my peers are doing. For 9 o'clock starts. So that's definitely one of the nice things about St. Anne's or studying a STEM subject. And I guess we'll move on. What are some of the things about St. Anne's that you like the most compared to other colleges, say?
I think what I quite like is that St. Anne's is very sort of modern in its outlook. I think a lot of the colleges, like, they have these all like big old buildings, and even though like they're really pretty, I feel like I'd be a bit intimidating when that's actually your college and that is the place you sort of walk into every day. Well, St. Anne's sort of being a bit more out of the city centre, it's a bit more quiet. And it is just a really lovely community. So I think sort of the fact that you can still go to all the pretty libraries in the centre, but if you want to sort of get out that sort of intimidating Oxford, which it isn't really, but in the beginning it can kind of feel like that with all the old buildings, I think it's really nice to sort of have that slight bit of distance.
Yeah, I also really like that St. Anne's is really close to the university parks. It's like a really nice big green space, and it can be really nice to just go for a walk or a run or have a picnic. in some green space in between studying. And I think that's really, really nice. I also really like that St Anne's is quite a big college relatively. It's still not huge, but there's quite a big undergraduate community, and we get lots of visiting students who come from abroad for 1 or 2 terms, and that can be really nice because you get to meet lots and lots of different people, and so you're much more likely to like find the right people for you, which I think is really nice.
Yeah, definitely. I think its proximity to uni parks is really nice. We experienced that quite a bit this summer, where when the weather was nice, you just cross the street and enter uni parks and play frisbee or go for a walk, and go and meet friends there, for example. I like as well, college canteen is quite modern. I think is the only college, I think, or one of a few that doesn't have pictures of old people in their college canteen. I think that was definitely one of the intimidating factors of some of the other colleges, seeing all of these like dozens of pictures of really old guys overlooking you whilst you eat. So that's definitely one of the nice things about St. Anne's. And St. Anne's has a couple of college libraries as well, one that's relatively old and another one that's relatively modern. And you really get to mix and match, you get to see which ones you prefer. And I definitely like the more modern library, but as well, I'd like to sometimes study in the old library.
Yeah, I think another thing about the canteen is that actually, like, compared to other colleges, St. Anne's food is really, really nice. It's like, I mean, it's still, you know, it's very cheap, so it's not super, super good food, but it's always like very decent. They've got usually about 3 or 4 options. You've always got a vegetarian option, usually also a vegan option. And especially like having tried the food at a couple other colleges, sometimes it's not that nice. So I'm really happy that St. Anne's actually, like, all the food is just pretty good.
Yeah, and something else about food at St. Anne's is we have a coffee shop, which I'm not sure if other colleges have coffee shops, but I don't think
many do, no.
And it's really great. They serve pizza, sandwiches, I think, wraps, and baked goods and hot drinks, and that's just another really good option to get cheap food.
Yeah, and it's also quite a nice space to study as well. So if you sort of rather sit in a cafe, but also don't want to go to one of like expensive cafes in Oxford and have to pay £3 for your coffee, the St. Anne's Cafe is really nice to just sit, and they also won't stare you away if you don't order anything for 3 hours because you're just a student there, so you're allowed to sit there. So if you'd rather have a study space where there's a bit more going on, that's also a really good place to sit.
It's also a nice place to host friends as well. If you want to bring a couple of friends over, it's a nice place to hang out. There's a conservatory upstairs that has some sofas and coffee tables as well, so you can sit comfortably and hopefully not talk about academics as well, take a break from that. What are some of the other things that college has within its grounds that might be of interest to some students that are looking to apply? Have you guys gone to a college bar or?
Yeah, so we have a college bar. I think all colleges do. Ours is a pretty good bar, and we have a college beer, which is the Beaver beer, because the beaver is the St. Anne's college animal. And yeah, I think it is a really nice bar, and it's a good place to meet other people from college. Yeah, I think we also have a college gym, which has a pretty decent rate. I don't know if either of you.
Yeah, I think I haven't been to the gym much because you kind of sign up and then don't really go. But the good thing is that the sign up is only £15, so it's not like you're sort of spending £30 a month on a gym membership that you never go to. But they have one weights room where you've got a couple of like loose weights and a couple of machines, and then a sort of cardio room where they've got like a treadmill and a bike. And then they also used to do yoga and Zumba classes, which you can just attend for free. So it has all the sort of basic things you need, and it's super cheap. So if you sort of don't need very fancy things from your gym, it's a pretty good one.
I guess one last question about St. Anne's before we take a look at the question in the chat. What's the accommodation like at St. Anne's?
I think for me, one of the things that was very good, because I'm on a 3-year course, and if you're on a 3-year course, then ANDS does offer you accommodation for all 3 years. So I think, because a lot of colleges, you have to live out in second year. So I think if you sort of don't want to have to go through that, that is quite a good thing. I'm still living out this year, just because I wanted to, and it's quite nice to also live in a house outside of college. But if I wanted to, I could have just lived in college. And I think that option that, you're always going to have a place to live, that is just, a 30-second walk from the library and the dining hall is really good.
Yeah, so St Anne's accommodation in general, as a fresher, I don't think any freshers have en suites, but about half of fresher accommodation has like sinks in the room. And then in second and third and maybe fourth year, if you're doing a 4-year degree, you have the option to be in an ensuite if you want. And I think all accommodation at St Anne's has a decent-ish kitchen access. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other facilities to do with accommodation, but I think that's it.
Yeah, kitchen standard varies a lot from accommodation to accommodation. Some, for example, in Wilson and Rain blocks, their kitchens are a lot more communal. There's space to really actually sit down and eat with your housemates. Whereas in maybe some of the other kitchens like Clare Paddy and Roof Beach, Roof Beach kitchens are maybe nicer than Wilson and Rain, but for example, there's not really a place for you to really sit in the kitchen and socialize with those in your house. Whereas Clare Paddy kitchen maybe has a higher ratio and less communal, but the building is slightly nicer than Wilson and Rain. So there's quite a variety, and I guess depending on your preferences would help you to choose what accommodation you'd like to stay in.
Yeah, because I think that's also maybe a good thing to mention. So in your first year, you just get put in a room, and there's special fresh accommodation. But then for your second and your third year, we've got a thing called the room ballot, and you do get to choose the room you live in for second and third year. But in first year, it's sometimes just a bit of luck where you end up.
But it's a pretty good accommodation. And in first year, I think all kitchens are pretty good. And that's something that's not true in other colleges.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So someone's asked, what is your favorite place to study in St Anne's College?
Personally, I really like the St Anne's coffee shop. I think it's got a really good mix of having a bit of ambient noise, but it's still quite quiet. And the desk space is good. And there's plugs to charge my laptop. So yeah, that's my.
Yeah, I think for me it's probably the new library, because we've got 2 library buildings. One's the new library, which is kind of like the square building that you see when you pass it on the road, and then the old library is the older building that has bricks, or no, I don't think it has bricks. It has like limestone and stuff. I live 5 minutes away from St Anne's, and I haven't been there too much because term hasn't started yet. So I forgot what college looks like, but that's fine. No, the new college library is quite nice because they have huge windows and quite good desk spaces. And then also because the geography books are in that library, I quite like to sit there. But I also like to sort of switch up my environment when I really have to study. So if I sort of have an essay deadline approaching, I might go sit in the old library for a bit of a change of scenery and to just sort of get my essay out in a couple hours. But yeah, I think in general, like the coffee shop's also nice. And St. Anne's is also right next to Jericho, which is a really nice neighborhood. And I also quite like just going to a cafe in Jericho to study, and they've got a couple good ones.
Yeah. I think prior to COVID, I definitely liked the basement in the new library. I think it was just a pretty cool space to work in. I think when all the sort of regulations and restrictions with COVID, it just became easier to work in my room. But I definitely liked the ground floor or the basement floor of the new library. There are also a few study rooms where if you have like you and a group of friends, maybe perhaps studying the same subject or maybe different subjects, but you just want to encourage one another whilst you guys are studying. There are a few breakout rooms which you can book or study rooms, which can host, I think, up to like 6 people. pre-COVID anyway, where you could study and that's within the library, but you won't be disturbing anyone, hopefully, if you're not too loud, because it's closed off from the rest of the main library. So moving on, more towards your subjects, more towards academics and workload. What's the average workload like in a week for your respective subjects, and how do you manage that workload?
I can go.
Yeah, sure. I think it's kind of, so for geography, we usually have about one essay a week. And then you've also got several other things. So we, for example, have field trips for which we have to write field trip reports. Then in your second year, you have to start thinking about dissertation topics, write a dissertation proposal. So the workload in terms of essays is usually quite constant, but there are sometimes a couple other things that you kind of need to get done at the same time. I think it's generally really good. Some weeks I'm sort of better at my time management than others. And some weeks you also just have more time than others. I think what I've definitely learned is how to work really efficiently, because I just like to do probably too many things besides my degree, which means that you just don't end up with not too many hours to write your essays, and really being able to, just focus during the hours and the days that I have, and just actually get the work done in that point means that I actually have time to do a lot beside my degree. So I think it kind of depends on how you like to work. I just like to sort of plan my day very full. So if I have 3 hours to work, I really do not have time to procrastinate, because if I give myself an entire day to do something, I will just do nothing for half of the day. So I think that sort of trying to be a bit disciplined means that you can fit in a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, so I think the workload, or maybe not the workload, but the structure of a day for a STEM subject can be quite different. So for material science, the day-to-day schedule varies quite a bit from year to year. But in first year, you'll generally have 3 hours of lectures every day, and then possibly 2 tutorials every week, maybe 3, plus labs, so practical classes where you do experiments every second week, and once a week, sort of like coding classes. So it's quite a full week, and there's definitely lots to do. But just like Issa said, if you fill your day with lots of other stuff, like extracurriculars, social events, sports, things like that, then the work just gets done, and it's actually not that heavy of a workload in the end. But yeah, so I'd say that for me, like I usually have about 5 contact hours a day, and then the rest of the day to do some work. So preparation for tutorials, writing up lab reports, or just other extra activities.
Yeah, and for maths and computer science, generally our contact time is slightly less, I think, compared to other STEM subjects, because we don't have labs, but generally around 10 to 20 contact hours per week, 10 on the low end, but generally more around 15, 16 on an average week. And that time involves lectures, tutorials, classes, maybe some practical classes as well. And the rest of your time is spent usually doing problem sheets and working on practicals. And generally in a week, that makes up around 40 to 50 hours of your week. If it's just a really busy week, then it might be closer to the 50 mark, but generally is around that 40 to 45. So it's kind of like a full-time job if you worked 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, Monday to Friday. That's roughly the workload that you'd have during the week. But imagine spacing that out now, maybe later into the evenings, also into the weekends. So there's quite a bit of time outside of studying to get involved in other activities. With that being said, what things outside of your degree do you guys get involved in? Are there any societies that are college specific or university wide, or things outside of the university, in fact?
I quite like to do a lot of sports, probably sometimes a bit too much. So I do rowing at the St. Anne's Boat Club. So that's St. Anne's specific. And it kind of rowing really depends on how much commitment you want to have. I know some people who just do it in a chill way, but I'm just, if I commit to something, I want to do it I just want to become good at it. So I ended up doing a lot of rowing. So I'd say I row about maybe 3 to 4 times a week in a normal week. And then, for example, in Trinity, we also had a rowing race at some point, and then it can get to like 5 to 6 sessions per week. And for a session, it is about 2.5 hours. So it can be quite a big time commitment. I also like doing going for runs, which is more of an individual thing. And I'm currently training for the Oxford Half Marathon, so hopefully I'll actually be able to finish that. But I'm running around 4 times a week now. And then I'm also involved in less sportsy societies. So I'm, for example, on the committee in Oxford Women in Business, which is just a lovely sort of women-focused society. And we put on events about careers, but everyone is very sort of chill and not. People in Oxford are careers focused, but I'd say that if you don't want to, there's not too much pressure on thinking about careers yet.
Yeah, so I also do some sport with college. So I do netball with college, and it's really chill. You don't have to be very good, and you can show up as much or as little as you want, which is really nice. So there's usually 1 match a week, and sometimes some training. Other than that, I also really like to crochet, which is probably a bit weird, but I like doing that, and it's a good thing. You can chat with friends while you crochet, so that's quite nice. I also work at the college bar, so that takes up some of my evenings. And then outside of college, I'm also on a like university-wide society committee, like ESA, so I'm on the Materials Society Committee, and that takes up some more time, and it's really nice. We just organize events, organize socials within my department, and it's a really good way to meet people. Other than that, yeah, I think socializing is just a really big thing, even if you're not doing it in a strict society environment. Just going to the pub with friends, or going out for dinner, or going to the park, those kind of things can take up quite a lot of time, which is really nice.
You mentioned that you work in the college bar. Is there much opportunity for students to work outside of their degree?
Yeah, so I think at Oxford you're not technically allowed to work during term time unless you're like employed by college. So things you can do are work in the college bar, which I do, and that's pretty good. It's pretty easy to sign up for. Sort of towards the end or middle of your first year, you can apply, and that's really great. I haven't been able to do much because of COVID, so the bar's been mostly closed. But it's really good, and it's a really friendly environment, and it's run by like an adult. But other than that, it's all student staff. So that's really
I like how we're still sort of just calling them adults. Well, technically everyone at uni is an adult, but it really shows that like we do still kind of think of ourselves as children. But that's completely fine. Like that's what you're at uni for. But yeah, I completely agree with Amelia. I'd say that it's not encouraged to work during term time. You do have to get like special tutor permission. But I'm also a university-wide ambassador, and like that is also a job, so you get paid for it. And that is something that you can do just because you're employed by the university. So I do think, like, for example, the Unique Summer School, I was one of the people running that this year, or because I mainly work as an international ambassador. So I'll do webinars for schools in a lot of different countries. So last year I've done webinars for schools in like Taiwan and Korea, and quite a couple Asian countries, just to sort of give people an international students perspective to Oxford. So those are sort of the kind of jobs that you can pick up here and there, but I'd say it's usually I maybe do like 2 or 3 webinars per term. So it's not like you're actually doing like 5 of them in a week, because I don't think I'd have the time for that.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I think other ways that you can be employed by college are doing telethons, which is like phoning up alumni to have a chat and ask for donations. You can also help at interviews, and I think that's paid.
Yeah, but those things, I think, good to mention is they're all during the breaks. Because during the break, like, obviously you have more time, and I know a lot of friends who work during the breaks, but during your term time you don't really want to like do a 20-hour job.
Yeah, other than the bar, I don't think. Yeah, the bar or maybe some outreach work. Yeah, it's best to stay away from working.
Yeah, it's really not encouraged to work during term time. I know some people have like relatively infrequent work. Maybe it's tutoring once a week for an hour or two, or some mentoring here and there, but nothing too intensive that would detract from the working term, because terms are like kind of intense and short, as they're only 8 weeks long. So maybe at another university where you're spending 13 weeks in your term, at Oxford you're only spending 8. So it's a lot more intense. But with that being said, usually the vacations, Christmas, Easter, and the summer mostly is where you have more of the freedom as to how you wish to spend your time. But really Oxford kind of owns the term, and it'd be best not to work too much. So moving on to finance and life in Oxford, we were actually speaking about this before the Q&A started, about how expensive Oxford feels. But how do you guys find budgeting in Oxford? Do you find it expensive? Is there any support systems for cash flow problems? What are your experiences?
I guess it is sort of a new experience, living out and then actually having to pay rent, and making sure you do have enough money to pay your rent, because that's important. But I'd say it's definitely not too hard. I think because we pay our rent in termly increments instead of monthly. So I think in that sense, you do kind of have to keep an eye on your money, because it is just suddenly a big chunk of money. But then if you just I'd like to sort of create a spreadsheet for every term and sort of figure out how much I can actually spend on everything. And like we were saying, Oxford is quite expensive. So while, yes, obviously you sometimes eat out or get a takeout or, grab a coffee somewhere, for me at least, it's really not feasible to do that every day. But I think that's why we also, for example, have the dining hall, which offers meals for about £3 to £5. And all the accommodation has kitchens, and cooking is usually quite cheap. So I'd say it's not too hard. But you do kind of have to keep an eye out that you're not going on too many club nights, because the money can really add up if you do that. I'd say if you fall short, I personally only had the problem because I have to transfer money from my Dutch account to my British account, and then that doesn't happen over the weekend. So at one point, I think I was left with like £2 before the weekend, and I forgot to transfer myself money, and I think my card got declined for like a portion of nachos, which was a bit embarrassing. But I'd say it's like you'll always get through it. I think for a weekend, you can like always borrow some money from friends. If you really struggle financially, there are quite some college bursaries and stuff available. You can always get in touch with the college bursar, who will be able to tell you more about that. But it's definitely like, if you don't feel like you have enough money to live in Oxford, people will help you, because like college does not want you to go hungry. Just reach out to them if you think you can't afford to live here.
Yeah, I was going to say that the college treasury can be really generous if you're in like a really tight spot, and super understanding. And you definitely should not be worried if you're not going to have enough money to carry you through the week or whatever, because definitely like college will help you if it's necessary.
Yeah, I think also is really good for the financial support that they offer for their students. I think pretty much everybody whose household income is below like 42,000 or so will get some sort of financial support of varying levels. There are bursaries and scholarships for people on different household incomes that have different conditions. Oxford's bursary is given without any conditions, so you don't have to do volunteering or anything. but it's important that to receive this financial support to share your information if you're applying for tuition fees and maintenance loan via student finance. So if you're applying through your Student Finance England and I think Student Finance Wales and the different bodies that provide you with financial support for university, to make that information available so that the university and college has access to those so that they can automatically put you through to these bursaries. But yeah, besides that, college does have a hardship fund where if you're really strapped for cash and maybe struggling to pay for food or even rent, to make them aware, and there's money to support you there if and when you need it. Moving on, what is the city of Oxford like to live in, especially maybe compared to the different cities that you guys are from or other cities you visited? What do you think about Oxford? What's it like? Is there a lot going on? Maybe it's boring, maybe it's pretty. What do you guys think?
I think that because Oxford is like first and foremost a student city, there is so much going on. There is always like 5 things happening every day, at least. I mean, probably way more. Different societies, different like plays and stuff going on. There's just so much going on every single day. And I definitely think that that's something to keep in mind. It's really not quiet at all. Well, it can be quiet if you want it to be, but there is just a lot going on. And there's never a day that I've been like, oh, I want to do something, but I can't think of anything to do. In terms of whether it's like very historic or not, I think Oxford is quite like, it's got a lot of museums, it's got old buildings, it's got like old libraries, things like that. And that can be really nice, but I don't think that that overshadows the fact that there's lots of fun, like young student-y things to do. So yeah, I really like living in Oxford. I think it's quite a nice sized city. It's not super big, but it's not too small that it's like claustrophobic. So yeah, I like Oxford a lot.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I think it is like, obviously it's quite an historic city because the university has been here for almost 1,000 years, I think. So you're just going to get old buildings and history, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing going on. I think especially like the historic city is actually quite busy because a lot of tourists like to visit. But then like Amelia said, it's also really a student city because you've got Oxford University, but then you've also got Oxford Brook. So I think combined, about 1/3 of Oxford is students, which is really funny when you're not here during term time because half of the city just feels empty because all the students have kind of moved away. I think it's quite a good city to live in. I think one thing that I do sort of try to encourage everyone to do is, especially in your first term, to just actually make an effort to go out and explore the city, because I think once you sort of get your workload, you're sometimes a bit overwhelmed, and it's just really easy to, you know, in your room, study, and then that like those are your days. But I felt that in the beginning I struggled quite a bit with actually sort of feeling at home in Oxford. Also because for me it was a different country, but even if it's not a different country, like moving to a different city is still a big deal. So I'd say sort of getting out and into the city and exploring the different parts really helped me to, you know, feel like I knew the city, and make me feel more at home there. So yeah, it's a lovely city, but also just make sure you actually, you know, go there. You don't just, well, college is lovely. Make sure you leave college, like try to leave college every day, I'd say, because sometimes a week goes by and you don't leave college and it can just get a bit, it just feels like your world's getting a bit small.
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth like taking advantage of Oxford as a city and like exploring everything. And most of the museums have free entry for students. Mm-hmm. So definitely like go to all the museums, even if you don't like museums, just to say you've been. And the Oxford Botanical Gardens are really great, and just like exploring the city while you can is definitely something I'd recommend.
Yeah, I've definitely got a bucket list of things to visit before I leave, because it'd be a shame to visit such a historic city and not visit everything you can. But yeah, definitely one of the things that's nice about St. Anne's is its proximity to the town centre. So especially for the colleges located in the city centre, there's definitely a lot more foot flow, a lot more tourists, a lot more noise. But St. Anne's is like roughly a 10-minute walk from the city centre, and really is a lot more peaceful, a lot more quiet. We don't really get many tourists visiting St. Anne's, so it does feel like you're leaving the hustle and bustle of the city centre as you're walking away from the city centre towards St. Anne's, which is kind of nice. So it still feels kind of homely and less busy and intrusive by the tourists, which is one of the nice things I like about St. Anne's. We've got a question here that asked about facilities in college, whether you can get access to music facilities in college, whether you have to be studying music to access those facilities, and whether you can have such facilities like a piano or keyboard inside your room.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure because I haven't used them myself. I think about the piano and keyboard in your room, if you bring it yourself, I can't think of a reason why not. One thing to be mindful of is the noise curfew though, so just make sure you're not doing it at like 2 a.m. at night, but I think otherwise that should be completely fine. I think there's music rooms that are basically like soundproof rooms that you can play music in. I think they're usually open to all students. I think because of COVID last year it was only music students, but I think usually like whatever subject you do, you can just use the music rooms.
Yeah, I think for having a piano or keyboard in your room, you can definitely bring one, but if you have to like plug it into the wall, it's like an electrical device. You have to like get it checked by someone. I don't know, it's like super easy. I just have never done it. Just to make sure that it doesn't like short circuit and set the room on fire. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. But you can definitely have a piano or keyboard in your room. Just if you, like Issa said, be careful about the noise.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody has a drum kit or anything in their room, but I definitely be sure that there'd be a few noise complaints if they did. But you are able to use the music practice rooms. I think there are a handful of practice rooms, and they have different facilities. They have pianos, drum kits, and you're free to go in them. I think the doors lock at a particular time late at night, maybe like 11 p.m. or so. However, you are free to use them pre-COVID at least. If you're a student at St. Anne's, you only require your fob to gain access. And moving on, we've got a question that asks about St. Anne's accessibility. They ask how accessible is St. Anne's? Are there a lot of stairs?
I've got a friend who like struggles to walk up lots of stairs, and so like there are quite a lot of stairs in St. Anne's. Like I didn't really notice them, but she does. But then she couldn't like comfortably get to her room at night, and so college just moved her to a room that was much more accessible. So even though there is a big chunk of stairs in one area of the freshers accommodation, but there is lots of ways to like bypass those stairs. And so even if it's not like directly accessible, the college does make an effort to make everyone feel like able to get to places.
Yeah, I think that's about like accessibility requirements. If you let college know beforehand, they're always able to, give you a room which has all the facilities you need. I think in the newer buildings, there's, for example, a couple like wheelchair rooms, like wheelchair accessible rooms that have like all the facilities that you need if you'd be a wheelchair user, but also other accessibility requirements. I think the most important thing is to just let the college disability advisor person, I don't really know what the role's called, but there is a person who's like in charge of that, and you just like let them know what kind of access you require, and they're super friendly and helpful, and they can always they'll make sure that you have a room that actually means that if, for example, you can't walk on stairs or struggle to walk on stairs, like Amelia said, they can just give you a room where there's actually no stairs, or at least maybe 2 or 3 if you just struggle to walk a lot of stairs. So I'd say just get in touch, and they'll be able to sort something out for you.
Yeah. Even if you have certain requirements, like you need access to Ensuite, for example, for one reason or the other, like you can still make those sorts of requests known. Provided you have like valid reason, college will do their best to accommodate you and move you to a room where you have those facilities that you need. So yeah, just make it known, and college will do their best. Are there any advantages or disadvantages, do you guys think, to being slightly further out from the city centre?
Yeah, I think like we mentioned before, like you don't get that many tourists, just because it's not a far walk, but it is about 5 to 10 minutes depending on how fast you walk. So it does mean that the roads are just, I mean, St. Anne's is in between two roads that are slightly busy with traffic, but you don't really notice it when you're in college. So I'd say like in college, it's a bit of a quieter college. Especially in Trinity, which is a summer term, there's still a lot of students around. So it's not like you don't see anyone, because there's a lot of people living on campus. But I think it is nice that you don't have loads of tourists walking around. And then also because St. Anne's is kind of located in between University Parks and Port Meadows. So Uni Parks we talked about before, but Port Meadows is also just a nice, like huge meadow, like very nice green space. So I'd say that's also nice that for like, I really like going on runs, and if I run for like 2 minutes, I'm just in a massive field that I can run in, which is way nicer than first having to try and make my way out of the city centre, because there is just a lot of people that you kind of have to run around. But even if you don't run, like it is nice to just have a bit of a break from the city and be able to like have a picnic and sit in nature and see some cows. So I'd say it's quite a good location, even if sometimes if you buy too much stuff at Tesco, the track can be a bit long.
Yeah, I was going to say the only disadvantage I can think of is the supermarket is like a 10-minute walk, or maybe 10-minute walk, and having lots, like a whole week's worth of shopping. It can just be really heavy. But other than that, I can't think of any.
You can get Tesco deliveries though. I've recently been very lazy and been getting my groceries delivered because I'm out of college. So for me, the grocery store is now about a 15-minute walk. And actually, you know, buying like 4 packages of milk, I don't really want to carry that. So we, like, as a house, we've just been getting our like big things like milk and rice and oats and stuff. We've just been getting it delivered, which is actually really cheap. So if you don't feel like walking all your groceries, that's also an option.
Yeah, and in terms of things that you'd think might be disadvantages, like all the clubs are like maybe a 20-minute walk from college, so it can be quite a like long walk back at night in the cold, and probably it's raining. But you're with friends, so it honestly doesn't matter. Like, you're all in it together, and it really is only a 20-minute walk at most, which just doesn't feel like that long. The same with like going to restaurants. If you're going to a gym out of college, maybe like a 15-minute walk from college, and so like that can be annoying, but it's just not that long. And most of these things that you'll always do with friends. And I think that like one thing to remember is that if you're far from the city centre, you're always going to go to the city centre no matter what, to do things like shopping, go to cafes, restaurants, clubs. But the things that are like near St. Anne's College that are a bit out of the city centre, so like Port Meadows, Uni Parks, Jericho, which is an area that Issa talked about before, all those things you're much more likely to go to if you're near them than if you're in the city centre. So like it's kind of, you get the best of both worlds, which I think is really nice.
Yeah, I think if you you can also, Oxford is a very like bike friendly city. So if you want to get, like, I love my bike. I'm also Dutch, so maybe I'm a bit, biased. But I love biking everywhere. And also, for example, the Iffley Road Sports Centre, which is the university sports centre from Anne's, is probably a 45-minute walk. So if you've got regular practice there, I wouldn't really recommend walking, but it is only a 10-minute cycle away. So it's like city centre is only a 10-minute walk. Anything you could want to go in Oxford is probably maybe a 15-minute cycle. So if you want to go to like maybe a gym that's a bit further out, if you get a bike, everything's still like really, really doable. But some people also just don't care about going to things that are a bit further away, so then you can just walk everything.
And St Anne's has a college bike sharing scheme, which I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I think
I did that in first term. You pay like £8 for a term, and you can use the bikes about 3 or 4 times a week. You just go to like the porter's lodge, ask for the key, and you can take the bike out for a couple hours.
Yeah, definitely. A bike makes any journey just a lot more reasonable. And if you're someone that maybe has a lot of activities outside of college, maybe you play a sport and then also you go to the gym, you have clubs and societies that aren't located near you, or even your faculty, which may be, a 20-30 minute walk. Having a bike can make a difference in terms of traveling to and from lectures and things like that. So it's definitely something to consider. And Oxford has a lot of secondhand bike shops where you can get a really decent bike at a decent price as well. So you shouldn't have to worry about paying large amounts of money for a brand new bike, which you can also leave at college over the vacations as well. So you don't have to worry about taking it home either.
And actually, I wouldn't recommend getting a very expensive bike because bike theft is relatively common in Oxford.
Yeah. I think the advice usually is get a lock that's more expensive than your bike. So make sure you've got a cheap bike and an expensive lock. That's the way to not get your bike stolen, and lock it up well.
Yeah, definitely. Sort of on a similar note, how close is St Anne's to each of our faculties? And how much would you recommend picking a college which is close to your department?
So I'm like maybe a 2-minute walk from the materials department. It's super, super close. Like in first year for 9 a.m. lectures, I used to wake up at 5 to 9. So it's really like incredibly close, and it's so useful. I didn't even consider it when thinking about where I was going to college. I hadn't even really realized until I moved in how close I was to the department, but it is really helpful. I wouldn't necessarily pick your college on how close it is to the department, even though it is really helpful and it meant that I could go home in between lectures. I wouldn't really mind having to cycle to my department for lectures or having to walk an extra 10 minutes. So while I think if you're someone who likes being close to things and maybe is always late to things, then being close to your department can be quite useful. But I wouldn't say it's like the be-all, end-all.
Yeah, I think the geography department's also relatively close. So the geography department's located in the Science Park, which is more on the northern side of Oxford, but kind of close to the centre. So for me, it's probably maybe a 10-minute walk through uni parks. So it's just a really nice walk through the park. Then I guess because we've had a lot of sort of experience with COVID and stuff, I haven't actually been in my department for about 1.5 years. So in that sense, it really, for me, probably didn't matter that much. And I think also a good thing about geography is that you don't really have 9 a.m. lectures. So even in my first year, when I had to go to the lectures in the department, my lectures all started at 11 a.m. So I guess that's also, if you're going to have 9 a.m. lectures and you really struggle to wake up in the morning, then that might be a reason to go for a college that's close by. But on the other hand, also, again, with the bike thing, if the department's further away and you don't want to have to walk for like 20 minutes, if you have a bike, it's always about maybe 5 minutes. So like you can choose a college based on it, but I wouldn't say it should be the most important consideration.
Yeah, I would agree. And probably also add that depending on your college, you may have to move out for second and third year and end up being a lot further away to your department or faculty. So really, like it is a hit and miss if you choose to apply to a college that's really close to your faculty and end up having to move out for second and third year. And yeah, so I'd probably put it lower down in terms of the list of priorities when picking a college, but it's definitely something that is a benefit to having a college that's close to the faculty. Um, and just another question on accommodation. How is the accommodation split for first years between single and double rooms? Are rooms of similar sizes, different sizes? Are there any double beds, perhaps? And is there any storage for international students who wish to keep renting their rooms between terms?
I think no, none of the rooms in Anne's has a double bed. It's all just single beds. I think Anne's does have some like college-owned properties, which is accommodation that is still owned by the college, but is outside of the college, where I think there might be a couple double rooms. But Freshers accommodations, everything single bed. Don't expect to get a double bed because you won't. I'd say the sizes are quite different. There's some buildings like Ruth Deach or Wolfson and Rain, where all the rooms are quite sort of standard sizes. But then, for example, the Bevington houses, because they're sort of old Victorian houses that have been remodeled a bit, the room sizes do really differ. And then for international students, there is international storage where you can leave your stuff, but it is quite difficult to rent your room in between terms. Obviously, if you have a reason, if you like can't go home, like I know with COVID, like a lot of international students have been able to stay in college for longer because they'd have to quarantine for a long time or they couldn't get home. So I think obviously if you have a reason, you can stay in your room, but it's usually encouraged that you just go home in between terms. But as an international student, like you can leave your stuff here in the storage and you don't have to like take 5 suitcases with you back and forth every time.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Sis said. Yeah, you definitely can rent your room during the holidays, but they increase the prices. Unfortunately, because college rents out rooms to like conferences and stuff. So if you can go home, do go home. It is 6 whole weeks. So yeah, it's definitely worth seeing your family and friends.
So sort of moving on to the welfare support that college makes available. What kind of support does St. Anne's offer with welfare? For some examples, if students are getting homesick, if they're stressed, or maybe there's a particular life event that has occurred that has made it difficult for the student to work, what sort of support is available?
Yeah, so I kind of had this in first term or towards the end of term. I just got a bit stressed about my degree and, you know, being sort of living in a country that's just far away from my parents and then my parents going through a bit of a difficult time. So I think first person that I kind of talked to was my personal tutor, which is someone who sort of is also an academic tutor, but they're also kind of there to check in mentally. And then my college tutor sort of referred me to the college like welfare, like dean of welfare. And then you can also, the university also has counselling services. So the dean of welfare, really lovely people. You can just kind of have a cup of tea and chat with them. And then if they think you might need a bit more support, they can refer you to the university counselling service, which is a university-wide place where you can get like basically free therapists for about 4 to 5 sessions, I think. But there is also like in college, you also, if it's just kind of like a one-time thing where you just need to talk to someone, the welfare deans are really great.
Yeah, something else is if you're really just a little bit homesick and you just want to chat to like another student, but maybe not a friend, then there's like a peer support system where students from like 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year are like trained to be able to just like have a confidential chat with you. And there's also like student representatives that are welfare representatives, and they can really help you to be directed to the right person, or maybe just have like a friendly chat if you need someone to talk to. So there's lots of options within college.
Yeah, it's also worth pointing out that if you are really struggling, it's worth making those struggles and issues known because like the tutors in the college will make they will try their best to make accommodation for you and make allowances to help you, whether that's giving you an extension on a deadline or whether that's even allowing you to skip a deadline, for example. They are really looking to help you as best as they can. And what can also happen is if you're, or if you have been dealing with the welfare dean, for example, for like the last however many weeks, the welfare dean can communicate on your behalf, so you don't have to rehash anything that you're dealing with each of the different people. For example, if you need to stay during the vacation because of something at home and you've spoken to the welfare dean can then tell accommodation on your behalf, not your story, but can just advocate for you without you having to re-explain those things. So having the college system where each of the departments are sort of interconnected and you only really need to deal with one to resolve your issue most of the times is helpful. So you don't have to feel worried or feel like it's daunting to have to re-explain things that you've explained already.
Yeah, and I think just really quick thing also with like deadline extensions. I've had a couple of times where I just sent my tutors a quick email like, hey, not really feeling great mentally today. Is it all right if I submit my essay a day later? And they're always completely fine with that. Like, you don't have to have an extensive explanation. I mean, it doesn't have to be really bad. If you just wake up and you're like, I'm really not feeling it today, I just don't think I can do it today, email your tutor and they're super, super nice about it.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone's really understanding. And if they're not, there are people you can talk to because they should be understanding. So yeah.
Just lastly, a quick question for Amelia. Someone's asked whether for material sciences or material sciences, you are expected to be back to a normal schedule this year?
So I can't answer for definite, but I know that the department is working really, really hard to do as much in person as possible. So I think you'll definitely have some live lab sessions, whether that's all of them or the majority of them. In terms of lectures, I'm pretty sure that sort of by the end of the year, they'll be back to normal, but I can't promise anything. If you really want to know, I think that there's like teachers, like tutors and stuff doing Q&As on the like Slido, so you can ask. I think the materials one is at 2 p.m. So you can ask Chris Grosvenor, and he's possibly going to know more than I will. So, yeah.
Cool. And lastly, any advice you would give for students applying to Oxford and possibly their parents as well?
I mean, I guess probably just do it. I think it is quite like a scary thing to apply. And I think I just applied because I was like, what if I can get in? And I don't think I ever expected to get in, but like in the end it did happen, and like people do get in. So I'd say just apply, try your best. But also if you don't get in, like that's, not the end of the world. There's lots of other great unis. So I'd say like definitely apply, because it is a good place to study, but also don't sort of put everything on Oxford and think you have to go to Oxford to like succeed in life or anything, because you really don't have to, and there's lots of other great places to go to.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that using the application process as a sort of like experience to learn more can be really great. So writing a personal statement, that takes like a lot of like research into your subject and realizing why you want to do it and why you're interested in it. And that's like a really great thing to do. And then in the interviews, like they can be quite daunting, but the tutors ask really interesting questions. And so it can just be like a nice way to delve deeper into your degree subject. And I would definitely like make the most of that.
Yeah, and I'd probably say for parents, like just support your child wherever possible. Really, it is kind of intense. I don't know whether interviews are in person at all this year, but you're like away from home. You are doing an interview sort of on your own. Maybe you have a few friends in Oxford or you meet a few people, but you're there on your own, and the whole process can be quite long and dreary. So I guess just supporting them wherever they can, that would interviews are all online this year. So yeah, even at that, like just supporting them wherever they can. I think is probably the best thing that you can do. Maybe not put too much pressure, because already the application process is quite intense in itself, and we're probably already putting enough pressure on ourselves as it is. So yeah, just support and relief of pressure, I'd say. And in the absence of questions, I think that brings us to the end of our Q&A. So yeah, thank you to Isa and Amelia for answering all our questions. And yeah, I hope we managed to answer all your questions. And if you do have any more questions, like on the St. Anne's website, you can contact current students at St. Anne's via the Access platform, and you'll see their profile descriptions there, so you can chat to students with specific subjects or experiences that you're really interested in hearing from. And with that being said, I don't know how long this live stream is still going on for, but I'm just trying